Hey everyone, it's me, Dr. Whimsy, and today we're talking about things that you can do that are safe and effective for healing aches and pains, minor aches and pains. And the reason I decided to cover this is first because I was requested to cover it, and secondly because it's come up in previous videos. And the first thing I want to say is that before you start any treatment plan, you want to make sure you understand what it is that you are actually treating. Now, there are all kinds of different aches and pains that can come about. If it's an acute injury, for example, and it's not particularly life-threatening, for example, if you have a sore muscle or cramps, which is common, particularly in women during times of premenstrual syndrome, menstrual syndrome, then an acute injury usually does very nicely with a little bit of icing. People will sometimes keep frozen peas in their freezer. They can just take it off, and take it out of the freezer, wrap it in a towel, put it on the area that's swollen or irritated, and usually that can help reduce any kind of aches or pain caused by an acute injury. And that works pretty good for the first 24 to 48 hours. After that, most sports medicine docs will recommend alternating hot and cold with gentle massage. That is usually how those types of aches and pains are treated. If it's a chronic case of aches and pains due to something like arthritis, the treatment would be probably different because we're not talking about acute pain, we're talking about chronic pain. In the case of osteoarthritis and challenges with pain due to inflammation in the joints, certain types of diets have been researched, the anti-inflammatory diet. But before we go getting complicated, the first thing I would suggest people do is talk to their doctor about healthy, responsible weight loss. And that's because too much weight, too much fat can in and of itself cause inflammation. And that's because fat cells produce something called inflammatory markers called cytokines. And those cytokines can create chronic inflammation. So it's not necessarily important to immediately go on an anti-inflammatory diet. It's first important to determine if the problem is too much weight and healthy, responsible weight loss. And that, of course, is something that you can talk to your doctor about. Now, when we're talking about the actual anti-inflammatory diet, we're talking about a diet that's predominantly plant-based, about 80% of total caloric intake, with the remaining 20% being lean animal proteins like fish, wild-caught fish, sardines, anchovies, salmon, lean organic chicken and turkey, and organic grass-fed beef that's about 12% fat or less. So that's an anti-inflammatory diet. In terms of some of the foods associated with increasing inflammation or aggravating existing inflammation, there's been some studies on gluten and gluten-containing foods, predominantly wheat. There's also been some studies on what are called the nightshade vegetables with mixed results. Some people do feel that the pain is reduced when they eliminate certain types of foods like eggplants, tomatoes, and potatoes. Some people reported that they saw no change at all. The best thing to do is to simply spend a couple days eliminating foods like those nightshade vegetables and see if you feel better afterwards. Other foods that people have reported improvement with when they remove it from their diet are the citrus fruits like oranges. Some people who have chronic arthritis say that their symptoms were reduced when they stopped drinking orange juice. Again, there's no way of knowing unless you give it a shot. But again, the results are mixed. The real thing we do know, though, from science-based research on chronic pain and arthritis is that top of the list is absolutely weight loss and making sure that our percentage body fat is at a healthy level. And that can be calculated online by going to Google and Googling calculate your BMI. and adding in your height and your weight. Now, BMI for calculating body mass index is not perfect, particularly if the person that is determining their body mass index is a man, and that's because muscle mass can be very, very heavy, and it doesn't necessarily let you know if the person is overweight or simply has a high percentage muscle mass. Determining actual percentage fat is a little bit more complicated. There are certain types of weight devices that persons can use that can determine if you have a high percentage fat. Again, healthcare providers can usually calculate that either by taking measurements or by using a scale that can determine fat percentage. So we've talked about an anti-inflammatory diet, which again, we really want to emphasize more a nutrient-dense diet. And we've talked about the importance of maintaining a healthy weight, gentle exercise. We've also talked about removing the cause, treating the cause and removing the cause of what led to the aches and pains in the first place. We've talked about treating acute pain by icing it first, and then gentle massage and alternating ice and cold packs as the usual standard of treatment if you're going in for any kind of sports medicine. And now we can talk a little bit about some of the research on herbal medicines, what works, what doesn't work, and what actually has some data behind it, starting with number 1, turmeric. There has been quite a bit of research on turmeric for the treatment of chronic aches and pains, and that's because turmeric contains some interesting active constituents. It has something called curcuminoids and salicylates, which seem to act similar to aspirin, getting inflammation down. Also, turmeric is the top of the list. It can be put in food, it can be taken in capsule form, but if you do take it in the capsule form, again, you want to talk to your healthcare provider about the best source or the best type of turmeric. I like the types that are phytosome, that are fat soluble. They're more absorbable, or what we call the Mariva brand. Ginger has also been researched, not just for reducing inflammation because it contains salicylates, and by the way, it's in the same family of plants as turmeric, but it's also been researched, ginger has, for helping in cases of acute nausea, either due to motion sickness or during pregnancy. We'll often prescribe it either as a syrup, a lozenge, or as a tea. Aloe vera is a fairly interesting plant. There's actually a considerable amount of research on aloe vera, and that's because aloe vera again contains salicylates, but it also seems to coat and heal the digestive tract when there is chronic inflammation in the digestive tract. So those are some of the most common herbs prescribed for dealing with minor aches and pains, minor inflammation. Pineapple derivative known as bromelain is often sold together with turmeric, and that may be found to be helpful as well. So there you have it. This is a really quick video of what you can do to reduce minor aches and pains using natural medicine. Just to go over it again, it was number 1, to find and treat the cause. Number 2, to remove the cause. Number 3, make sure you're on a nutrient-dense diet and that you have spoken to your doctor about healthy, responsible weight loss. Number 4, we talked a little bit about the evidence regarding anti-inflammatory diet and maybe giving that a shot. Removing gluten, removing processed foods. Reducing consumption of nightshade vegetables and citrus foods. And we talked about some of the herbs that are currently being researched for reducing inflammation: ginger, turmeric, and aloe vera. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. My name is Dr. Whimsy Anderson. If you'd like to find out more about my work, you can go to drwhimsy.com. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.